9:13 right now. You know, it's such an important topic right now that we are talking about, and that's heart health. And there are some habits that we know are bad, right? Smoking, not exercising, eating unhealthy foods, even though they're so good sometimes. What are some other habits that are good and bad that can really impact cardiovascular health?
Well, joining us live this morning is Dr. Sinatra. He is a board-certified cardiologist with more than 40 years of experience. Good morning, Dr. Sinatra. Thanks so much for being with us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, one of the things that you suggest is that sleep and heart health are actually connected, which doesn't bode well for us since we don't sleep much on this shift. But can you tell me why there is that relationship there?
Well, we used to think that if you got 7 or 8 hours of sleep, that was great for you. So the duration was important. But recently, coming out of Europe, the European Heart Journal, I had this study, and it really resonated with me because as a cardiologist, you can imagine, I never slept at night. I was a midnight hero for years, you know, putting in emergency pacemakers, taking care of heart attacks. But when I saw this study, this really had an impact on me. And what the study demonstrated is that it's the time you go to bed. So if you go to bed after midnight, you had more cardiovascular risk, especially if you're a woman. Or if you went to bed before 9 o'clock, you had more risk.
Really? Why?
The ideal time was between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night.
But what's the time factor have to do? I thought it was the length of time that you slept that was the issue.
Yes, that's what everybody thought. But the time factor has to do with the natural circadian rhythms of the body. In other words, the cortisol relationships, the adrenaline relationships, the release of hormones when we sleep. So it's the time you go to bed. And I'll tell you, I really like this study. It was a large study. It was over several years. It had 88,000 people in it. And women were more at risk than men. So there were a lot of heart attacks in this study over the 5 years. And women were worse than men. So my plea is to women more than men, go to sleep between 10 and 11 o'clock at night, and your heart will thank you for it.
My heart is going to be very angry with me because I have to go to sleep earlier than those times that you give us because we have an unnatural circadian rhythm because you know we have to get up at 2 or 3 in the morning. So are we basically, you know, up what's creek?
No, you're not. You're not. Look, there's lots of things you can do, and basically, the greatest discoveries that I've made in 50 years of medicine. In fact, my 50th reunion is at Albany Med. I went to Albany Med in Albany, New York. And that's coming up in May. But my greatest discoveries have been coenzyme Q10 and the essence of earthing and grounding. They're both powerful electron donors. They do incredible things for the body. So when it comes to earthing and grounding, I'm all in. And that will protect you, especially if you are, going to bed during these haphazard times. If you do ground and put your bare feet on Mother Earth during the day or before you go to bed, you'll reset your autonomic nervous system to a healthier degree.
Okay.
And that's
Let me understand what you're saying here, because there's a lot of people who work weird shifts, right? Overnight, like you said, you were a midnight hero. So many nurses and doctors who worked at overnight shift, construction workers, so on and so forth. You're talking about going barefoot. Where? Like, are you talking about, let me take a step outside and go barefoot and get in touch with the earth? Or are you talking about just like exercising barefoot in your own home?
Actually, it can be both. I mean, there's a picture of the beach, for example. Now, one of the reasons why I moved to Florida, and I live on the beach, because when I did the research years ago, and I have a second book coming out on earthing and grounding in a few months, I believed it so much that at my age, I wanted to live on the beach because the benefits of earthing every day are phenomenal. I mean, it's unbelievable. The amount of inflammation that goes down in your body is incredible. Every time you put your bare feet on Mother Earth, you're soaking up, loads and loads of electrons, just like taking handfuls of antioxidants, vitamins and minerals. But when you put bare feet on Mother Earth, you're getting it for free. What you're absorbing is basically all the electrons from lightning strikes that occur, around the equator or in Florida here, in the Tampa area. We're the lightning capital of the USA. But when the Earth is struck by lightning, it's endowed with all these electrons. When you put your bare feet on Mother Earth, now, even in New York City, if you wanted to go to the park, for example, take your shoes off and sit on a park bench and put your feet on, not on asphalt, but on grass or sand or brick, those things will conduct Mother Earth energy.
Well, that is fascinating. So bare feet on linoleum is not going to get you anywhere, clearly.
No. But I got to tell you, I was in New York City a couple of years ago, and I walked through Central Park. Because again, I was born in New York City. I wanted to go back, and the first thing I did when I was in Central Park, I was sitting on a bench. I took off my shoes and put my bare feet on the grass. And again, it doesn't take long. Just a few minutes. 15 to 20 minutes of barefoot walking, especially coming off a plane. When people get jet lagged.
That really is.
It's unbelievable. You put your bare feet on when you're at the airport, waiting for a taxi or a bus or something. You put it on concrete. You'll reset your autonomic nervous system, and the amount of emotional stress goes way down in the body.
That is really fascinating. What about, switching gears a little bit, what about things like loneliness or social isolation, especially after we've been through this pandemic? How does that impact our heart?
Oh, that's huge. I mean, my background is cardiology, but I was also a psychotherapist. I spent years studying psychotherapy. And I wrote the book Heartbreak and Heart Disease years ago. It's one of my best books. And I have to tell you that loneliness is really the worst sin. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have to tell you, when I had patients in my office, elderly patients, and even younger patients in their 60s, for example, who lost a spouse and their children were dispersed across the United States and they were living alone. Yeah. And these people would come to my office, their shoulders would be down, they'd be somewhat depressed, they were talking in a monotone. The best thing I could tell them to do was to get reconnected, and getting a pet, for example. Going to a shelter and connecting with a cat or a dog, and basically, letting that animal choose you. This would breathe in aliveness into my depressed patients, because again, loneliness is the greatest sin. So sometimes a pet can give you unconditional love and bring you out of that loneliness and snap you back.
So take the pet into the backyard, sit out there, barefoot, eating carrots.
And pet the pet, because the pet's grounded. Remember that.
Okay, so it's all the things. But real quick, because we're almost out of time, all of these things with the correlation of eating healthy, right? Because that's a huge component of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have to eat healthy. I mean, sugar is a major sin. I mean, fresh fruits and vegetables, with a lot of carotenoids, polyphenols, bioflavonoids, it's really, really important. Remember, sugar is the enemy. Sugar elicits an insulin response, and sugar will age you prematurely. There's so many studies on this, especially the skin. The more sugar you take in, the quicker you age because of the insulin relationship associated with sugar.
Wow. Really fascinating stuff, Dr. Sinatra. We really appreciate you sharing all of this. We're going to be walking out of here with no shoes, no socks on.
Any relation to Frank? Was there any relation to Frank? No, right? How many times have you been asked that?
Sort of, yeah. I mean, my grandfather and his father grew up in the same town in Sicily. So
there you
go.
The
library burned down in 1898, so we really don't know. But I'll tell you, his first wife, Nancy Sinatra, I treated for years.
Oh,
wow.
Look at that.
Small world. Dr. Sinatra, thanks so much. We really enjoyed speaking with you this morning.
Oh, likewise.
Good stuff.
Take
Good
care.
Stuff. I wish I had my feet on a beach right about now.
I'm